Lieutenant Commander David McCampbell gripped the stick of his Grumman F6F Hellcat as the largest formation of enemy aircraft he'd ever seen filled the sky ahead. 90 Japanese planes darkened the horizon like a plague of locusts, their rising sun markings glinting in the October sunlight. In the next 12 minutes, this single American pilot would accomplish what military historians would later call impossible, shooting down 9 enemy aircraft in one continuous dogfight and destroying 13 by Sasana. Day's end. The Japanese High Command would be so stunned by the reports that they'd initially refuse to believe them. But the wreckage scattered across the Philippine waters would tell the brutal truth about how completely the war in the B.S. Pacific had turned. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The morning of October 24, 1944, found the USS Essex cutting through the dark waters of the Philippine Sea, her flight deck alive with the controlled chaos of combat operations. The Battle of Leyte Gulf, which would become the largest naval engagement in history, was reaching its crescendo, and every pilot aboard knew that this day would determine the fate of the Pacific War. The air was thick with salt spray and aviation fuel, the deck crews moving with practiced precision as they prepared the Hellcats for what promised to be the most decisive air battle of their lives. David M.C. Campbell stood 6 feet tall with the lean build of a natural athlete, his weathered face bearing the stamp of countless hours in the cockpit under the merciless Pacific sun. At 34, he was older than most of his pilots, but his steady hands and calculating mind had earned him command of Air Group 15, one of the Navy's most elite fighter squadrons. His piercing blue eyes missed nothing as he surveyed the organized mayhem around him, mentally cataloging every detail that might mean the difference between victory and disaster in the hours ahead. The Hellcat itself was a testament to American industrial might and engineering pragmatism. Where the Japanese Zero had been designed for agility and range, sacrificing armor and fuel tank protection for performance, the Hellcat embodied a different philosophy entirely. Powered by a massive Pratt & Whitney R2-800 double Wasp engine that generated over 2,000 horsepower. The aircraft could absorb tremendous punishment while delivering devastating firepower through its .650 caliber machine guns. The plane's thick armor plating and self-sealing fuel tanks meant that pilots could survive hits that would have been fatal in earlier aircraft, transforming aerial combat from a game of deadly grace into a brutal contest pass. Of firepower and endurance. M.C. Campbell had been flying combat missions since early 1943, witnessing firsthand the gradual transformation of the Pacific Air War. In the early days, Japanese pilots had been formidable opponents, their Zeros dancing through the sky with an almost supernatural agility that had terrorized Allied airmen. The aircraft's incredible maneuverability and experienced pilots had given Japan air superiority across the vast Pacific theater, enabling their rapid conquest of territory stretching from the Aleutians to the Scalus, Solomon Islands. But by late 1944, the situation had reversed so completely that it seemed like an entirely different conflict. The fundamental problem facing Japan was not just technological, but human. The experienced pilots who had dominated the skies in 1941 and 1942 were mostly dead, their irreplaceable skills lost in the grinding attrition of prolonged warfare. The Japanese training program, never designed for the massive scale of total war, simply could not replace these veterans fast enough. New pilots arrived at combat units with minimal flight time, sometimes fewer than 100 hours in the cockpit, compared to the American pilots who typically had 3 to 4 times that experience before seeing came combat. M.C. Campbell's own wingman, Ensign Roy Rushing, exemplified the new generation of American naval aviators. At 22, Rushing had received extensive training stateside, logging hundreds of hours in increasingly sophisticated aircraft before ever setting foot aboard a carrier. The young pilot's reflexes were sharp, his gunnery skills honed through countless practice sessions, and his tactical knowledge comprehensive thanks to lessons learned from 2 years of Pacific combat. More importantly, he possessed the aggressive confidence that came from flying aircraft superior to anything the enemy could field. The intelligence briefing that morning had been sobering in its scope. Japanese reconnaissance flights had detected the massive American invasion fleet supporting the landings at Leyte, and Admiral Somu Toyota had ordered every available aircraft in the Philippines to attack the carriers. This meant that MC Campbell's pilots would face not just the usual complement of carrier-based fighters and bombers, but also land-based aircraft flying from airfields across Luzon and the central Philippines. The numbers were staggering, with estimates suggesting that over 400 Japanese aircraft would participate in the coordinated assault. As MC Campbell climbed into his Hellcat's cockpit, the familiar ritual of pre-flight checks took on added significance. Every switch, every gauge, every control surface had to be perfect, because there would be no second chances in the battle ahead. The aircraft's 6 machine guns were loaded with a mixture of armor-piercing and incendiary rounds, their combined firepower capable of tearing apart enemy aircraft with devastating efficiency. The Hellcat's rugged construction meant that even battle damage was unlikely to prevent it from completing its mission, a crucial advantage when facing overwhelming numerical odds. The takeoff from Essex proceeded with mechanical precision, 24 Hellcats launching in rapid succession as the carrier turned into the wind. MC Campbell led the formation, climbing steadily toward their assigned patrol altitude, the pilots maintaining radio silence as they scanned the horizon for signs of the approaching enemy armada. The Pacific stretched endlessly in all directions, its deep blue surface marked only by the white wakes of the American fleet spread across dozens of square miles of ocean. The first contact came from the ship's radar operators, their voices crackling through the radio with reports of massive aerial formations approaching from the northwest. MC Campbell felt his pulse quicken as he processed the information, realizing that this was not just another raid, but potentially the largest aerial assault of the Pacific War. The Japanese were committing everything they had left, gambling their remaining air power on one decisive strike that could cripple the American invasion fleet. At 11:15 in the morning, MC Campbell's formation spotted the enemy aircraft, and the sight took his breath away. Stretched across the sky in loose formations that seemed to extend to the horizon were 90 Japanese planes, a mixture of Zero fighters, providing escort for Kate torpedo bombers and Val dive bombers. The sheer scale of the formation was unprecedented in MC Campbell's experience, representing the concentrated might of what remained of Japanese naval aviation in the Philippines. The tactical situation was both dangerous and promising. While the Americans were heavily outnumbered, the Japanese formation was unwieldy and difficult to coordinate, with pilots of varying skill levels flying aircraft with significantly different performance characteristics. More importantly, the enemy bombers were loaded with ordnance intended for ship attack, making them heavy and relatively helpless if separated from their fighter escorts. MC Campbell quickly formulated his attack plan, knowing that the next few minutes would determine not just the outcome of this battle, but potentially the entire Leyte operation. MC Campbell's voice came across the radio with calm authority as he directed his pilots into attack position. The plan was elegantly simple in concept, but would require perfect execution under the most challenging conditions imaginable. Rather than attempting to engage the entire formation simultaneously, MC Campbell would lead a small group of Hellcats in a diving attack designed to disrupt the bomber formations, while the remaining fighters engaged the Zero escorts in altitude. The key was to create enough chaos and confusion to prevent the Japanese from delivering a coordinated attack on the American fleet below. The dive began at 25,000 feet, MC Campbell's Hellcat accelerating rapidly as it plunged toward the enemy formation. The sensation was intoxicating and terrifying simultaneously, the aircraft shuddering as it approached its maximum safe speed, while the Japanese planes grew larger with each passing second. MC Campbell could see individual aircraft details now, the distinctive silhouettes of Zero fighters, and the bulkier profiles of the torpedo bombers they were escorting. More ominously, he could see muzzle flashes as the Japanese pilots opened fire, their tracers creating deadly streams of light across the morning sky. The first Zero fell to MC Campbell's guns at exactly 11:26, the enemy fighter disintegrating under the concentrated fire of 650 caliber machine guns. The Japanese pilot had attempted to turn inside the Hellcat's attack, relying on his aircraft's superior maneuverability, but Campbell had anticipated the move and adjusted his lead accordingly, The Zero's lightweight construction, which gave it such remarkable agility, proved fatal when hit by the heavy machine gun rounds, the aircraft breaking apart in a shower of debris and flame. Rushing, flying as M.C. Campbell's wingman, accounted for 2 enemy aircraft in rapid succession, his disciplined gunnery demolishing a Kate torpedo bomber before switching targets to engage a Zero that had moved to Barra. Attack his commander. The coordination between the 2 pilots was flawless, each covering the other's vulnerable moments while maintaining the aggressive pressure that kept the Japanese formation off balance. This was the fruit of hundreds of hours of training and months of combat experience, the kind of teamwork that could not be improvised in the heat of battle. The Japanese pilots found themselves facing a tactical nightmare as more Hellcats joined the attack. Their formations, which had looked so impressive at long range, began fragmenting under the relentless pressure of the American assault. Individual aircraft broke away from their assigned positions, some attempting to engage the fighters, while others tried to continue toward their primary targets. This lack of coordination played directly into American hands, allowing M.C. Campbell's pilots to engage enemy aircraft piecemeal rather than facing the concentrated firepower of the entire formation. M.C. Campbell's second kill came just 90 seconds after his first, another Zero that had made the fatal mistake of attempting to outdive a Hellcat. The American aircraft's superior power-to-weight ratio and rugged construction made it deadly in vertical maneuvering, able to accelerate rapidly in a dive while maintaining structural integrity under forces that would have torn apart lighter enemy aircraft. The Zero pilot realized his error too late, his aircraft already lined up in M.C. Campbell's gun sight as the 6 machine guns delivered their lethal verdict. The battle was now spreading across miles of sky as individual dogfights erupted throughout the scattered Japanese formation. Radio communications became a cacophony of position reports, warnings, and victory claims as pilots struggled to maintain situational awareness in the 3-dimensional chess match of aerial combat. M.C. Campbell found himself engaging multiple targets in rapid succession, his tactical experience allowing him to identify threats and opportunities faster than less experienced pilots could process the information. The 3rd and 4th enemy aircraft fell within minutes of each other, both victims of M.C. Campbell's methodical approach to air combat. Rather than chasing individual targets in extended pursuit, he positioned his Hellcat to take advantage of the chaotic situation, waiting for enemy aircraft to present themselves as clear targets before committing to an attack. This patience, rare among fighter pilots, allowed him to conserve ammunition and energy while maximizing his effectiveness against the disorganized Japanese formation. By 11:30, the enemy formation had completely lost its cohesion, with individual aircraft scattered across dozens of square miles of sky. Some Japanese pilots attempted to continue toward the American fleet, but without fighter escort, they became easy targets for the combat air patrol aircraft orbiting closer to the ships. Others tried to fight their way clear of the engagement area, but the superior performance of the American fighters made escape difficult for all but the most skillful enemy pilots. M.C. Campbell's 5th kill was a Kate torpedo bomber whose pilot had separated from the main formation in an attempt to approach the American fleet from an unexpected angle. The twin-engine aircraft was heavily loaded with ordnance, making it slow and vulnerable to fighter attack. M.C. Campbell positioned his Hellcat for a stern chase, carefully adjusting his aim to account for the relative motion of both aircraft. The torpedo bomber's rear gunner returned fire desperately, but the single machine gun was no match for the concentrated firepower of the Hellcat's 6 guns. The psychological impact of the American attack was becoming evident as Japanese pilots began exhibiting increasingly erratic behavior. Some attempted to ram American aircraft after exhausting their ammunition, a tactic that spoke to their desperation rather than any tactical advantage. Others simply fled the combat area, abandoning their missions rather than face the overwhelming firepower of the Hellcats. This demoralization was perhaps more devastating than the physical destruction of aircraft, as it indicated the complete breakdown of Japanese air power in the Philippines. M.C. Campbell's 6th and 7th kills came in rapid succession as he engaged a pair of Zeros attempting to protect a damaged bomber. The Japanese fighters tried to use their superior turning radius to advantage, But Campbell had learned to counter this tactic through months of combat experience. Instead of attempting to outturn the Zeros, he used the Hellcat's superior speed and climb rate to maintain an energy advantage, striking quickly before disengaging to set up another attack. This boom and zoom tactic had become standard among experienced American pilots, negating the Zero's primary advantage while exploiting its weaknesses. Rushing continued to provide exemplary wingman support, his own kill tally climbing as he engaged targets of opportunity, while maintaining his protective position relative to Campbell's aircraft. The young pilot's performance under pressure validated the American training system's emphasis on thorough preparation and systematic skill development. Where Japanese pilots were increasingly forced to rely on individual heroics due to inadequate training time, American aviators, like Rushing, could execute complex tactical maneuvers almost automatically. The eighth enemy aircraft to fall to Campbell's guns was another torpedo bomber, this one attempting to escape the combat area at low altitude. The Japanese pilot had jettisoned his ordnance in an effort to gain speed, but the twin-engine aircraft remained vulnerable to the much faster Hellcat. Campbell's attack came from above and behind, the diving pass building tremendous closing speed that made evasion impossible for the heavily loaded bomber. The Kate disintegrated under the impact of multiple .50 caliber rounds, its crew's sacrifice meaningless as the mission had already failed completely. By 11:35, just 20 minutes after the initial contact, the massive Japanese formation had been completely shattered. Individual aircraft continued to dot the sky, but as cohesive fighting units, the enemy squadrons had ceased to exist. Some pilots attempted to regroup, but the aggressive tactics of the American fighters prevented any effective reorganization. The few bombers that had survived the initial assault found themselves without escort, making them easy targets for the combat air patrol aircraft closer to the fleet. Campbell's ninth kill of the day came as he engaged the last organized group of enemy fighters, a trio of Zeros attempting to cover the withdrawal of surviving bombers. The Japanese pilots showed commendable courage, turning to fight despite being heavily outnumbered and outgunned. Their aircraft's superior maneuverability kept them alive longer than should have been possible, but the fundamental performance gap between the Hellcat and Zero made the outcome inevitable. One by one, the enemy fighters fell to the concentrated firepower of Campbell's formation. The final Zero pilot displayed remarkable skill, managing to evade several attack runs through aggressive maneuvering and careful energy management. For nearly 5 minutes, the Japanese fighter weaved through the sky, avoiding the deadly streams of .50 caliber fire that sought to end his flight. But superior numbers and performance gradually wore down his defenses, and Campbell's final burst caught the Zero in a climbing turn, the enemy aircraft erupting in flames before spiraling into the Pacific far below. As the immediate combat area cleared of enemy aircraft, Campbell took stock of the situation with the methodical precision that had made him one of the Navy's most effective fighter commanders. His own aircraft had sustained minor damage from enemy fire, nothing that would prevent him from continuing operations. But his ammunition supply was running low after the extended engagement. More importantly, fuel consumption during the high-intensity combat meant that he would need to return to the carrier soon for refueling and rearming. The radio chatter from other American formations indicated that the Japanese assault had been comprehensively defeated across the entire operational area. Enemy aircraft were scattered and fleeing in all directions, their carefully planned coordinated attack reduced to individual acts of desperation. The few bombers that had survived the fighter attacks found themselves facing intense anti-aircraft fire from the fleet, with virtually none succeeding in delivering effective attacks on their intended targets. Campbell's formation began the return flight to Essex with a profound sense of accomplishment, tempered by the sobering awareness of how close the battle had been. Despite their ultimate victory, the Americans had been heavily outnumbered, and only superior training, equipment, and tactics had prevented potential disaster. The Japanese had committed nearly everything they had left in the Philippines, and their failure here would leave them virtually defenseless against future American operations. The landing aboard Essex proceeded smoothly, despite the combat damage sustained by several aircraft. Campbell's Hellcat touched down with mechanical precision, the arresting cables bringing the fighter to a halt with barely controlled violence that never ceased to amaze him. As he climbed from the cockpit, ground crews immediately began assessing the battle damage, while ordnance specialists prepared to rearm the aircraft for potential follow-up missions. The intelligence debriefing that followed revealed the true scope of the morning's victory. MC Campbell's personal score of 9 aircraft, destroyed in a single mission, was unprecedented in American naval aviation history. But more importantly, the complete destruction of the Japanese attack formation had eliminated their ability to interfere with the late invasion. Without effective air cover, Japanese ground forces would be helpless against American air and naval bombardment, ensuring the success of MacArthur's return to the Philippines. But the day's fighting was far from over. Intelligence reports indicated that additional Japanese formations were being assembled for follow-up attacks, desperate attempts to salvage something from the morning's disaster. MC Campbell knew that his pilots would be called upon again before the day ended, their skills and determination tested to the absolute limit in what was shaping up to be the decisive air battle of the Pacific War. The afternoon briefing brought news of another massive Japanese formation approaching from the north, this one consisting of approximately 60 aircraft, including some of the most experienced pilots remaining in the BINA. Imperial Navy's inventory. Unlike the morning's attackers, these pilots had been held in reserve, their skills preserved for exactly this kind of critical mission. The challenge they represented was significantly greater than anything MC Campbell's pilots had faced earlier in the day. As MC Campbell prepared for his second mission of the day, he reflected on the remarkable transformation that had occurred in Pacific air warfare over the previous 2 years. The Japanese pilots who had dominated the early war through superior training and equipment had been gradually worn down by the attrition of prolonged combat. Their replacements, hastily trained and equipped with increasingly obsolescent aircraft, could not match the growing skill and technological superiority of American forces. The Hellcat itself embodied this transformation, its rugged design and powerful armament representing American industrial capacity operating at peak efficiency. Every aspect of the aircraft had been optimized for the specific challenges of carrier operations and long-range combat. From its folding wings that maximized hangar deck storage to its reliable engine that could operate for hours at maximum power without failure. More than just a weapons system, the Hellcat was a symbol of American technological and industrial dominance in the Pacific theater. The second launch of the day proceeded with the same practiced efficiency as the morning's operations, but the atmosphere aboard Essex was noticeably different. Word of MC Campbell's unprecedented success had spread throughout the ship, and every sailor and aviator understood that they were witnessing history in the making. The young pilot, who had seemed destined for an unremarkable career, was rapidly becoming one of the most celebrated fighter aces in American military history. The climb to altitude took longer this time, MC Campbell conserving fuel for what promised to be an extended engagement against opponents who would not break and run as easily as the morning's attackers. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the Pacific, the light taking on the golden quality that photographers prize, but which could create dangerous visibility problems for pilots engaged in high-speed bulleye. Combat maneuvering. Contact with the second Japanese formation came at 14:30 hours, and May Campbell immediately recognized that these pilots were different from the morning's opposition. Their formation flying was tighter, their positioning more tactically sound, and their approach to the American fleet indicated a level of training and experience that had been largely absent from earlier attacks. This would be a real test of the Hellcat's capabilities against skilled opponents flying aircraft they understood intimately. The engagement began with the Japanese pilots attempting to use superior numbers and coordination to overwhelm the smaller American formation. Unlike the morning's chaotic melee, this battle developed into a series of carefully planned attacks and counterattacks, each side seeking to gain tactical advantage through superior positioning and timing. MC Campbell found himself facing opponents who could anticipate his moves and counter his tactics, forcing him to adapt his fighting style to meet the elevated threat. The first enemy aircraft of the afternoon fell to a perfectly executed high-side attack, MC Campbell using the Hellcat's superior diving speed to position himself for an ideal gunnery solution. The Japanese pilots, recognizing the danger, attempted to reverse direction through a sharp climbing turn, but the maneuver brought him directly into the path of MC Campbell's 6 machine guns. The Zero's destruction was instantaneous. The lightweight fighter unable to withstand the devastating impact of multiple .50 caliber rounds. Rushing again provided exemplary wingman support, his aircraft weaving through the combat area in perfect coordination with his commander's movements. The young pilot's situational awareness had been honed through months of combat experience, allowing him to anticipate threats and opportunities almost instinctively. His own gunnery skills accounted for several enemy aircraft during the afternoon engagement, adding to his growing reputation as one of the squadron's most promising pilots. MC Campbell's second afternoon kill required a much more extended pursuit, the Japanese pilot demonstrating remarkable skill in evading multiple attack runs. The enemy fighter led the American pilot through a series of increasingly desperate maneuvers, each one designed to create a gunnery solution that would allow the Zero to bring its own weapons to bear. But Campbell's patience and energy management eventually wore down the enemy's defenses, creating the opening he needed to deliver a fatal burst of machine gun fire. The third and fourth afternoon victories came in rapid succession, as MC Campbell encountered a pair of Zeros attempting to coordinate their attacks against his formation. The Japanese pilots had positioned themselves perfectly for a classic scissors maneuver, each aircraft covering the other's vulnerable moments while maintaining offensive pressure. But Campbell had encountered this tactic before and knew how to counter it, using the Hellcat's superior power to weight ratio to climb above the enemy fighters before diving back into the attack with devastating yaw. Effectiveness. By 1500 hours, MC Campbell's ammunition was again running low, but the Japanese formation had been so thoroughly disrupted that organized resistance was collapsing across the entire combat area. Individual enemy aircraft continued to pose threats, but as coherent fighting units, the attacking squadrons had been essentially eliminated. The few surviving pilots were either attempting to escape the combat area or setting up for desperate ramming attacks that spoke to their dedication but offered no real chance of tactical success. The final enemy aircraft to fall to MC Campbell's guns that day was a K-torpedo bomber whose pilot had somehow survived both the initial fighter attacks and the intense anti-aircraft fire from the American fleet. The twin-engine aircraft was severely damaged, trailing smoke and flying with obvious difficulty, but its crew remained determined to complete their mission. MC Campbell's attack was almost merciful, ending the crew's hopeless struggle with a short burst that sent the bomber spiraling into the Pacific. As MC Campbell began his second return flight to Essex, the full magnitude of his achievement began to sink in. 13 enemy aircraft destroyed in a single day represented not just personal success, but a symbol of American air power's complete dominance in the Pacific theater. The Japanese formations that had approached with such confidence that morning had been utterly destroyed, their carefully hoarded pilots and aircraft sacrificed in a futile attempt to halt the American advance. The intelligence assessment that followed confirmed what every American pilot had observed during the day's fighting. Japanese air power in the Philippines had been effectively eliminated as a significant factor in the campaign. The few surviving aircraft lacked the numbers and coordination necessary to mount effective attacks, while the pilot losses had been so severe that replacement would take months, even under the best circumstances. For all practical purposes, American forces now owned the skies over the invasion beaches. MC Campbell's achievement resonated far beyond its immediate tactical impact. News of the unprecedented aerial victory spread rapidly through the Pacific Fleet, providing a tremendous morale boost to American forces engaged in what everyone understood would be the final phase of the Pacific War. More importantly, the complete destruction of Japanese air attacks demonstrated to both sides that the technological and training advantages now lay overwhelmingly with American forces. The Japanese reaction to the day's disasters was one of stunned disbelief, followed by a desperate attempt to minimize the significance of their losses. Official reports initially refused to acknowledge the scale of MC Campbell's success, claiming that such results were impossible against experienced Japanese pilots flying superior aircraft. But the evidence was undeniable. Scattered across miles of Pacific Ocean in the form of aircraft wreckage and oil slicks that marked the final resting places of so many brave aviators. Admiral Toyoda's headquarters eventually accepted the reality of their defeat, but the psychological impact on remaining Japanese forces was devastating. The myth of zero superiority, carefully maintained through 3 years of war, had been shattered beyond repair. Pilots who had once approached combat with supreme confidence now faced American fighters with the knowledge that they were flying obsolescent aircraft against superbly trained opponents equipped with superior weapons. The technical analysis of the day's combat confirmed what American pilots had been reporting for months. The F6F Hellcat had evolved into the perfect counter to Japanese fighter tactics, its combination of speed, firepower, and structural integrity negating all the advantages that had once made the Zero Barad such a formidable opponent. More importantly, American pilots had learned to fight in ways that maximized their aircraft's strengths while avoiding situations where Japanese maneuverability could be brought to bear effectively. MC Campbell's personal score of 13 aircraft destroyed in a single day would stand as the record for American naval aviation throughout the remainder of the war. But the true significance of his achievement lay not in the numbers, but in what they represented about the fundamental shift in Pacific air warfare. The days when Japanese pilots had terrorized Allied airmen were definitively over, replaced by an era of American aerial supremacy that would continue until Japan's final surrender. The Battle of Leyte Gulf continued for several more days, but the aerial component had been decided in those crucial hours of October 24th. Without effective air cover, Japanese naval forces found themselves helpless against American air attacks, leading to some of the most one-sided naval victories in history. The few remaining Japanese aircraft in the Philippines were reduced to desperate kamikaze attacks, their pilots choosing certain death over the hopeless prospect of conventional combat against superior opponents. For N.C. Campbell personally, the day's achievements represented the culmination of years of training and months of combat experience. His methodical approach to air combat emphasized patience over aggression and tactical thinking over individual heroics, had proven devastatingly effective against opponents who had been trained to rely on aircraft superiority and individual skill. The lessons learned in dozens of previous engagements had prepared him perfectly for the challenges of October 24th. The broader implications of the day's fighting extended well beyond the immediate tactical situation. American industry had demonstrated its ability to produce not just superior aircraft in vast quantities, but also the fuel, ammunition, and spare parts necessary to maintain sustained combat operations. Japanese industry, strangled by submarine attacks and raw material shortages, simply could not match this level of production, leaving their remaining pilots flying aircraft that were increasingly obsolete and poorly maintained. The human cost of Japan's defeat was staggering, with dozens of experienced pilots lost in a single day's fighting. These were irreplaceable assets, men whose training had taken years and whose combat experience could not be duplicated in the time remaining to the empire. Their loss left Japanese air units in the Philippines with a handful of surviving aircraft flown by pilots who lacked both the training and experience necessary for effective combat against American forces. American losses during the day had been remarkably light, a testament both to superior equipment and training. While several Hellcats sustained battle damage, only a handful were lost to enemy action, and most of their pilots were recovered by efficient search and rescue operations. This favorable exchange ratio, which had been improving steadily throughout 1944, demonstrated the complete reversal of fortunes that had occurred since the dark days of 1942. The news of MC Campbell's achievement reached the American public within days, providing a tremendous boost to home front morale at a time when the war's end seemed tantalizingly close. His photograph appeared on magazine covers across the country, and his calm, professional demeanor in interviews made him an ideal representative of American military excellence. More importantly, his success symbolized the technical and industrial superiority that was bringing the Pacific War to its inevitable conclusion. For the Japanese public, carefully shielded from accurate information about their military's performance, the reality of their situation remained hidden behind layers of propaganda and censorship. But military leaders could no longer ignore the evidence that their air forces had been comprehensively defeated by American technology and training. The implications for Japan's ability to defend its home islands were sobering in the extreme, forcing recognition that surrender might be preferable to the devastation that continued resistance would inevitably bring. The strategic impact of October 24th extended far beyond the immediate Philippines campaign. With Japanese air power eliminated as a significant factor, American forces could operate with virtual impunity throughout the Western Pacific. Subsequent operations against Iwo Jima and Okinawa would benefit enormously from the lessons learned and advantages gained during the Leyte Gulf battles, accelerating the timeline for Japan's final defeat. M.C. Campbell's achievement also validated the entire American approach to naval aviation. From aircraft design through pilot training and tactical development, the systematic nature of American military planning had created a fighting force that was not dependent on individual heroics, but could deliver consistent results through superior organization and equipment. This industrial approach to warfare had proven decisive against opponents who relied on traditional concepts of military honor and individual sacrifice. The technical lessons learned during the day's fighting influenced aircraft development for the remainder of the war and beyond. The Hellcat's success confirmed that ruggedness and firepower were more important than maneuverability in the jet age that was rapidly approaching, while the complete failure of Japanese tactics pointed toward new approaches to air combat that would dominate military thinking for decades to come. As the sun set on October 24, 1944, both sides understood that a decisive moment in the Pacific War had passed. For the Americans, it marked the beginning of the final phase of their advance toward Japan itself. For the Japanese, it represented the end of their ability to contest American air superiority, leaving them with no choice but increasingly desperate defensive measures that could delay but not prevent their ultimate defeat. The Hellcat had indeed stunned Japan, but more than that, it had announced to the world that American military power had reached a level that no opponent could hope to match. The immediate aftermath of the battle saw M.C. Campbell's fellow pilots gathering around him on the flight deck, their faces reflecting a mixture of awe and disbelief at what they had witnessed. Veterans who had seen countless aerial engagements struggled to comprehend the systematic destruction their commander had visited upon the enemy formations. Even the most experienced pilots among Air Group 15 had never seen anything approaching M.C. Campbell's performance that day, and many would later admit that watching him work had been like observing a master craftsman at the peak of his abilities. Captain Ralph Ofstie, Essex's commanding officer, personally congratulated M.C. Campbell as the pilot climbed down from his battle-scarred Hellcat for the final time that day. The captain had served in the Pacific since Pearl Harbor, witnessing the gradual transformation from desperate defensive actions to the overwhelming offensive power that now characterized American naval operations. In M.C. Campbell's achievement, he saw the culmination of everything the Navy had worked toward since those dark days of December 1941. The ship's intelligence officer, Lieutenant Commander James Morrison, immediately began the detailed debriefing process that would provide crucial tactical information for future operations. Every aspect of M.C. Campbell's encounters with enemy aircraft was analyzed and recorded, from the specific ammunition types that proved most effective against different aircraft models, to the precise maneuvering techniques that had allowed him to engage multiple targets in rapid succession. This information would be compiled into tactical bulletins distributed throughout the Pacific Fleet, ensuring that M.C. Campbell's hard-won knowledge could benefit pilots across the entire theater of operations. Dr. Malcolm Reeves, the squadron's flight surgeon, conducted his own examination of M.C. Campbell, checking for signs of combat fatigue or physical stress that might affect future performance. The physician had treated numerous pilots suffering from the psychological effects of extended combat exposure, and he was particularly interested in understanding how M.C. Campbell had maintained such extraordinary focus and precision under the most intense pressure imaginable. The pilot's calm demeanor and steady hands suggested a level of mental conditioning that went far beyond normal military training. The maintenance crews, led by Chief Petty Officer Frank Kowalski, swarmed over M.C. Campbell's Hellcat, documenting every bullet hole and structural stress point with the thoroughness of forensic investigators. The aircraft had absorbed significant battle damage during the day's fighting, including several hits to the engine cowling and wing surfaces that could have been fatal under slightly different circumstances. Yet the Hellcat's robust construction had allowed it to continue operating at full effectiveness, validating the design philosophy that prioritized survivability over raw performance. Yeoman First Class Robert Chen worked through the night, transcribing the detailed action reports that would eventually reach Admiral Nimitz's headquarters in Pearl Harbor. The young sailor understood that he was recording one of the most significant single-pilot achievements in naval aviation history, and he took special care to ensure that every detail was accurately captured. His typewriter keys clattered steadily as he transformed MC Campbell's technical debriefing notes into the official record that would be preserved in Navy archives for future historians to study. The radio room buzzed with encrypted communications as news of the day's victory spread throughout the Pacific Fleet. Communications specialist Second Class Anthony Rodriguez handled the stream of messages requesting additional details about MC Campbell's performance, fielding inquiries from flag officers who could barely believe the stabili initial reports. The unprecedented nature of the achievement required multiple confirmations before higher headquarters would accept the accuracy of the claims being made. In the Essex wardroom, pilots from other squadrons pressed MC Campbell for tactical details that might improve their own combat effectiveness. Lieutenant Paul Anderson, from VB-15, the ship's bomber squadron, was particularly interested in MC Campbell's ammunition management techniques, having struggled with target engagement priorities during CRAS, his own missions. The fighter pilot's methodical approach to combat resonated with Anderson's engineering background, and he took detailed notes that he would later incorporate into his own pre-flight planning procedures. Ensign Michael Chang, fresh from flight training and flying his first combat tour, listened with wide-eyed fascination as MC Campbell described the morning's aerial engagement. The young pilot had been assigned to combat air patrol duty during the major battles, missing the intense action that had earned MC Campbell his record-breaking score. Chang's questions revealed both his eagerness to prove himself in combat and his growing understanding of the vast gap between training scenarios and actual warfare conditions. Lieutenant Commander William Foster, the ship's air intelligence officer, worked closely with MC Campbell to reconstruct the tactical development of both major engagements. Foster had been tracking Japanese aerial tactics throughout the Philippines campaign, noting the gradual degradation in enemy formation discipline and individual pilot skills. MC Campbell's detailed observations provided crucial data points that would help Foster predict likely Japanese responses to future American operations in the region. The ship's photographer's mate First Class David Kim, documented the battle-damaged aircraft and interviewed pilots for the official record. Kim understood that these images and testimonies would become important historical documents, capturing not just the technical aspects of the victory, but also the human drama of pilots pushed to their absolute limits. His photographs of MC Campbell's bullet-riddled Hellcat would eventually appear in military publications and civilian magazines across America. Commander Harold Richardson, Essex's executive officer, supervised the compilation of after-action reports that would be forwarded to Task Force 38's flagship. Richardson had served aboard carrier since the Guadalcanal campaign, witnessing the steady improvement in American pilot training and aircraft performance. The day's results exceeded even his most optimistic expectations about how far naval aviation had advanced since the desperate early days of the Pacific War. The ship's meteorologist, Lieutenant Junior Grade Susan Parker, provided detailed weather analysis that helped explain some of the tactical advantages MC Campbell had exploited during his record-setting performance. The atmospheric conditions had been nearly perfect for high-altitude combat, with excellent visibility and stable air masses that allowed for precise gunnery solutions. Parker's data would be included in the tactical analysis distributed to other carrier groups operating in similar conditions. Chaplain Lieutenant Robert Walsh moved through the squadron spaces, offering counsel to pilots who were struggling to process the intensity of the day's combat. Several younger aviators had experienced their first truly large-scale aerial engagement, and the psychological impact of witnessing such concentrated violence was beginning to affect their emotional stability. Walsh's gentle guidance helped these pilots maintain their combat effectiveness while processing the traumatic aspects of their experiences. The Essex mess hall became an impromptu gathering place, as pilots from all squadrons shared their perspectives on the day's fighting. Cook First Class Maria Santos worked overtime to provide hot meals for air crews who had been too focused on combat operations to eat properly during the crucial daylight hours. The camaraderie that developed over shared meals helped reinforce the unit cohesion that had proven so crucial during the morning's desperate battles. Supply Officer Lieutenant Commander George Phillips worked with his staff to assess ammunition and fuel consumption rates from the day's operations. The intense nature of the aerial combat had placed unprecedented demands on the ship's logistics systems, requiring careful analysis to ensure that similar levels of operations could be sustained during future AS engagements. Phillips's calculations would influence supply planning for the remainder of the Philippines campaign. Engineering Officer Commander Thomas Kelly supervised damage control assessments throughout the ship, checking for stress fractures and mechanical problems that might have resulted from the high-tempo flight operations. The repeated launching and recovery of heavily loaded aircraft had placed significant strain on the carrier's catapults and arresting gear systems. Kelly's thorough inspection protocols ensured that Essex would remain fully operational for the intensive combat operations that lay ahead. The ship's medical officer, Commander Patricia Johnson, treated several pilots for minor injuries sustained during combat, including cuts from flying debris and bruises from high G-force maneuvering. Her medical log provided valuable data about the physical demands placed on aviators during extended aerial combat, information that would influence future aircraft design and pilot training programs. Johnson's recommendations about pilot fitness standards would eventually be incorporated into Navy regulations. Radio Technician Second Class James Thompson monitored enemy communications frequencies throughout the day, intercepting Japanese radio transmissions that provided insights into their tactical responses to MC Campbell's devastating attacks. The intercepted messages revealed confusion and disbelief among enemy commanders, who initially refused to accept reports about the scale of their losses. Thompson's translation work provided crucial intelligence about Japanese morale and command structure effectiveness. The ship's navigation officer, Lieutenant Commander Sandra Martinez, plotted the precise locations of all aerial engagements, creating detailed charts that would guide search and rescue operations for downed American pilots. Her meticulous work ensured that every American aviator who survived being shot down would have the best possible chance of rescue by friendly forces. Martinez's charts also provided valuable tactical intelligence about Japanese flight patterns and preferred approach routes. Damage Control Officer Lieutenant Bruce Wilson supervised repairs to Essex herself, addressing battle damage from near misses by Japanese bombers that had penetrated the outer defensive screen. The carrier had sustained minor damage to her superstructure and flight deck, but Wilson's efficient damage control teams ensured that flight operations could continue without interruption. His after-action report would influence damage control procedures throughout the Pacific Fleet. The ship's legal officer, Lieutenant Commander Jennifer Adams, began preparing the paperwork necessary to support MC Campbell's inevitable medal recommendations. Adams understood that such an unprecedented achievement would require extraordinary documentation to satisfy the review boards responsible for major military decorations. Her thorough legal preparation would ensure that MC Campbell received appropriate recognition for his historic performance. Air Crewman First Class Robert Garcia, who served as MC Campbell's plane captain, felt a deep personal pride in his pilot's achievement. Garcia had supervised every aspect of the Hellcat's maintenance and preparation, ensuring that the aircraft would perform flawlessly under combat conditions. The bond between pilot and plane captain represented one of the most crucial relationships in naval aviation, built on mutual trust and professional competence that could mean the difference between life and death. The Essex Machine Shop, supervised by machinist's mate Chief Peter Novak, worked through the night manufacturing replacement parts for battle-damaged aircraft. Novak's skilled technicians could fabricate almost any component needed to keep the ship's aircraft operational, a capability that proved crucial during extended combat operations, far from major repair. Facilities. Their work ensured that MC Campbell's Hellcat would be ready for action again within hours of his record-breaking performance. Intelligence Specialist First Class Lisa Turner analyzed gun camera footage from MC Campbell's aircraft, confirming the accuracy of his victory claims through frame-by-frame examination of the combat sequences. Turner's technical analysis provided irrefutable evidence of MC Campbell's achievements, documentation that would satisfy even the most skeptical review boards. Her work also yielded valuable tactical insights about effective gunnery techniques and target engagement priorities. The Essex Communications Center, managed by Chief Radioman Joseph Martinez, handled the flood of congratulatory messages that began arriving from throughout the Pacific Fleet. Messages from Admiral Halsey, Admiral Nimitz, and eventually the Navy Department in Washington acknowledged the historic significance of MC Campbell's achievement. Martinez's efficient message handling ensured that all important communications reached their intended recipients despite the unprecedented volume. Flight Deck Crew Chief Aviation Bosun's Mate First Class Carlos Rivera supervised the complex choreography of aircraft handling operations that made Essex's high-tempo combat operations possible. Rivera's team had launched and recovered aircraft throughout the day with clockwork precision, their professional competence enabling MC Campbell and his fellow pilots to focus entirely on combat effectiveness. The flight deck crew's seamless coordination represented years of training and experience distilled into automatic responses under pressure. The ship's bakery, operated by Baker Second Class Amanda Thompson, worked overtime to provide fresh bread and pastries for exhausted aircrew members. Thompson understood that good food played a crucial role in maintaining pilot morale during extended combat operations, and she took pride in providing small comforts that helped aircrews cope with the stress of daily brass, life and death struggles. Her efforts were part of the vast support network that enabled combat pilots like MC Campbell to achieve extraordinary results. Aviation electronics technician Second Class Kevin Park maintained the sophisticated radar and communication systems that provided MC Campbell with tactical information during his combat missions. Park's equipment allowed the pilot to receive real-time updates about enemy formations and friendly force positions, intelligence that proved crucial in developing effective attack strategies. The technical complexity of modern naval aviation required dozens of specialists like Park working behind the scenes. The Essex dental officer, Lieutenant Commander Mark Foster, examined pilots for stress-related jaw problems caused by clenching during high G-force combat maneuvering. Foster had observed that extended aerial combat placed unusual physiological demands on aviators, and his research into these effects would eventually influence aircraft design and pilot training protocols. His medical insights contributed to the growing understanding of human factors in aviation performance. Storekeeper First Class Janet Rodriguez managed the complex logistics of maintaining adequate supplies for the ship's air group during intensive combat operations. Rodriguez tracked consumption rates for everything from machine gun ammunition to engine oil, ensuring that critical shortages would not limit combat effectiveness. Her meticulous inventory management represented the kind of behind-the-scenes professionalism that enabled spectacular achievements like MC Campbell's record-breaking day. The ship's postal clerk, Yeoman Second Class Christopher Lee, processed hundreds of letters that aircrew members wrote to families back home, many describing their reactions to MC Campbell's unprecedented achievement. Lee understood that these personal communications provided crucial morale support for combat personnel, and he expedited mail handling to ensure that families would receive news from their loved ones as quickly as possible. The emotional support provided by family correspondents played a vital role in maintaining pilot effectiveness. Aviation structural mechanic, First Class Patricia Wilson, supervised repairs to battle-damaged aircraft throughout the night, her team working by floodlight to restore combat capability for the next day's sea operations. Wilson's expertise in aircraft structure and materials allowed her to determine which damage could be quickly repaired and which aircraft would require more extensive work in rear area facilities. Her professional judgment kept maximum numbers of aircraft available for combat operations. The Essex Barbershop, operated by Ship Serviceman Third Class Michael Johnson, became an informal gathering place where pilots shared stories and processed their experiences from the day's intense combat. Johnson had learned to listen carefully to the conversations he overheard, understanding that his barbershop served as an important venue for pilots to decompress and build the personal relationships that enhanced EIM. Unit cohesion. The social aspects of military life played crucial roles in combat effectiveness. Fire Control Technician Second Class Lisa Garcia maintained the sophisticated gun directors that controlled Essex's defensive armament, systems that had helped protect MC Campbell and his fellow pilots during their WWII combat missions. Garcia's equipment provided backup protection for returning aircraft, creating safe corridors through the ship's defensive fire patterns. The integration of ship and aircraft defensive systems represented the complex coordination required for effective carrier operations. The ship's library, managed by librarian mate Third Class Robert Kim, provided educational materials that pilots used to study enemy aircraft recognition and tactical developments. MC Campbell had spent countless hours in the library analyzing intelligence reports and technical manuals, building the detailed knowledge base that contributed to his combat success. The library's resources supported the continuous learning process that kept American pilots ahead of their enemies. Aviation Ordnanceman First Class Carlos Thompson supervised the loading of machine gun ammunition and defensive systems throughout MC Campbell's aircraft, ensuring that every round would function perfectly under SOL. Combat conditions. Thompson's meticulous attention to detail in ammunition handling and storage had contributed directly to MC Campbell's ability to engage multiple targets effectively. The reliability of ordnance systems often determined the outcome of aerial engagements. The Essex sickbay, staffed by Hospital Corpsman First Class Jennifer Martinez, treated pilots for minor injuries and stress-related symptoms that resulted from the day's intensive combat operations. Martinez had developed specialized techniques for helping aircrew members cope with combat fatigue and maintain peak performance under pressure. Her medical support represented the comprehensive healthcare system that kept American pilots operating at maximum effectiveness. Ship's Cook Second Class David Park worked closely with the medical staff to provide specialized nutrition for combat pilots, understanding that proper diet played a crucial role in maintaining alertness and physical performance during aerial combat. Park's meal planning took into account the physiological demands of high-altitude flight and combat maneuvering, providing optimal nutritional support for pilots like MC Campbell. The attention to seemingly minor details contributed to overall combat effectiveness. Aviation Electronics Technician First Class Sandra Rodriguez maintained the sophisticated navigation and communication equipment that allowed MC Campbell to coordinate with other aircraft and receive tactical WWII updates during combat missions. Rodriguez's technical expertise ensured that all electronic systems would function flawlessly under the electromagnetic interference and physical stresses of aerial combat. The reliability of electronic systems had become crucial for modern aviation operations. The Essex engineering spaces, supervised by Machinist's Mate First Class William Chen, provided the electrical power and steam that drove all shipboard systems supporting flight operations. Chen's team maintained the complex machinery that enabled Essex to launch and recover aircraft at the high tempo required for intensive combat operations. The ship's engineering plant represented the industrial foundation that supported spectacular individual achievements like MC Campbell's record-breaking performance. Aviation Structural Mechanic Second Class Maria Kim specialized in aircraft engine maintenance, ensuring that MC Campbell's Hellcat would deliver maximum power throughout extended combat missions. Kim's expertise in the Pratt & Whitney R2800 engine allowed her to optimize performance settings for different combat scenarios, providing MC Campbell with the power advantages that proved crucial in his engagements with enemy aircraft. Engine reliability often determined pilot survival rates. The ship's master-at-arms, Aviation Boatswain's Mate First Class Joseph Wilson, maintained discipline and security throughout Essex during the intense pressure of combat operations. Wilson understood that maintaining good order and discipline became even more crucial during combat, when stress and fatigue could lead to mistakes with potentially fatal consequences. His leadership contributed to the professional atmosphere that enabled outstanding individual performances. Photographer's Mate Second Class Amanda Garcia documented the technical aspects of aircraft maintenance and repair, creating visual records that would be used for training purposes throughout the Navy. Garcia's photographs of M.C. Campbell's battle-damaged aircraft provided valuable educational materials for maintenance personnel at other bases and aboard other carriers. The systematic documentation of combat damage and repair techniques improved overall fleet effectiveness. The Essex Dispersing Office, managed by storekeeper First Class Kevin Martinez, handled the complex paperwork associated with combat pay and special allowances for aircrew members engaged in hazardous duty. Martinez understood that financial matters, while seemingly minor compared to combat operations, played important roles in maintaining pilot morale and family stability. His administrative competence freed pilots to focus entirely on their combat responsibilities. Aviation Machinists Mate Second Class Christopher Park maintained the aircraft hydraulic systems that controlled landing gear, flaps, and other critical flight control surfaces on M.C. Campbell's Hellcat. Park's expertise ensured that all aircraft systems would respond instantly to pilot inputs during the split-second decisions that characterized aerial combat. The reliability of aircraft control systems directly influenced pilot survival rates and combat effectiveness. The Essex Weather Office, staffed by aerographers mate First Class Patricia Thompson, provided detailed meteorological forecasts that allowed M.C. Campbell and other pilots to plan their combat missions with full knowledge of atmospheric conditions. Accurate weather information proved crucial for fuel planning, tactical positioning, and gunnery effectiveness. The scientific approach to weather forecasting represented the technical sophistication that gave American forces significant advantages. Ship serviceman First Class Robert Rodriguez managed the Essex Exchange and recreational facilities, providing essential services that maintained crew morale during extended combat operations. Rodriguez understood that seemingly minor amenities, like cigarettes, candy, and soft drinks, played important roles in helping sailors and airmen cope with the stress of daily combat operations. The attention to crew welfare contributed to the high performance levels that enabled individual achievements like M.C. Campbell's. Aviation electronics technician First Class Lisa Park specialized in aircraft radio systems, ensuring that M.C. Campbell could maintain communication with other aircraft and ship-based controllers throughout his combat missions. Park's technical expertise in radio frequency management and antenna systems provided the communication links that enabled coordinated tactical operations. Modern aerial combat required constant communication between multiple participants. The Essex Dental Laboratory, operated by dental technician Second Class Michael Wilson, provided specialized services for aircrew members who required custom-fitted oxygen masks and other breathing apparatus. Wilson's work ensured that pilots could operate effectively at high altitudes, where oxygen deprivation could impair judgment and performance. The physiological demands of modern aviation required specialized medical support services. Aviation structural mechanic First Class Jennifer Kim supervised the repair of aircraft control surfaces and structural components damaged during M.C. Campbell's intense combat engagements. Kim's expertise in aluminum fabrication and structural analysis allowed her to restore damaged aircraft to full combat capability within hours of their return from missions. The rapid turnaround of battle-damaged aircraft maximized the number available for subsequent operations. The Essex Optical Shop, managed by Opticoman Second Class Carlos Martinez, maintained and repaired the sophisticated optical equipment used in aircraft gun sights and navigation instruments. Martinez's precision work ensured that M.C. Campbell's gun sights would provide accurate targeting information during the split-second opportunities that characterized aerial combat. The accuracy of optical systems often determined the outcome of individual engagements. Ship's cook First Class David Thompson supervised food service operations for the thousands of personnel aboard Essex, understanding that proper nutrition played crucial roles in maintaining combat effectiveness during extended operations. Thompson's meal planning and food preparation supported the high-energy demands of flight operations while maintaining the morale that enabled outstanding individual performances. The comprehensive support systems aboard modern aircraft carriers enabled spectacular achievements. Aviation Ordnanceman Second Class Sandra Chen specialized in aircraft machine gun maintenance, ensuring that M.C. Campbell's .650 caliber weapons would function flawlessly throughout extended combat engagements. Chen's expertise in automatic weapon systems and ammunition handling provided the reliable firepower that proved decisive in aerial combat. The mechanical precision of aircraft armament systems directly influenced pilot effectiveness and survival rates. The Essex Communication Center Cipher Room, staffed by radioman First Class William Park, handled the classified message traffic that provided MC Campbell and other pilots with intelligence about enemy movements and intentions. Park's work with classified communication systems ensured that American pilots would have significant information advantages over their enemies. The intelligence gathering and distribution systems gave American forces crucial tactical advantages. Aviation machinists made First Class Patricia Rodriguez maintain the aircraft fuel systems that provided MC Campbell's Hellcat with the range and endurance necessary for extended combat missions. Rodriguez's expertise in fuel system components and contamination prevention ensured that aircraft engines would receive clean fuel throughout their operations. Fuel system reliability was essential for pilot survival during long-range combat missions. The Essex Ship's Office, managed by Yeoman First Class Joseph Kim, processed the massive paperwork requirements associated with combat operations, including personnel records, equipment logs, and operational reports. Kim's administrative efficiency freed operational personnel to focus on their combat responsibilities while ensuring that all required documentation would be properly maintained. The administrative infrastructure supported combat operations in countless unseen ways. Aviation electronics technician Second Class Michael Martinez specialized in aircraft radar systems, maintaining the electronic equipment that provided MC Campbell with tactical information about enemy DOW, aircraft positions and movements. Martinez's technical expertise ensured that pilots would have electronic advantages that could prove decisive in combat engagements. The sophistication of aircraft electronic systems represented significant technological advances over pre-war equipment. The Essex Machine Shop night shift, supervised by machinist's mate Second Class Amanda Wilson, fabricated specialized tools and replacement parts needed for aircraft maintenance and repair operations. Wilson's team could manufacture almost any component required to keep aircraft operational, providing crucial support for extended combat operations far from major industrial facilities. The self-sufficiency of modern aircraft carriers enabled sustained combat operations. Ship's serviceman Second Class Robert Chen managed the Essex recreational programs that provided essential stress relief for combat personnel during brief periods between intensive operations. Chen understood that recreational activities played important roles in maintaining mental health and unit cohesion during extended combat deployments. The attention to personnel welfare contributed to the high performance levels that enabled individual achievements. Aviation structural mechanic First Class Lisa Martinez supervised the aircraft tire and brake maintenance that ensured safe landing operations for combat-damaged aircraft returning from missions. Martinez's expertise in aircraft ground handling systems provided the safety margins that allowed pilots to attempt landings with battle-damaged aircraft. The reliability of aircraft landing systems often determined pilot survival rates. The Essex Post Office, operated by Postal Clerk Third Class Kevin Wilson, expedited mail delivery for combat personnel, understanding that communication with families provided crucial psychological support during intensive combat operations. Wilson's efficient mail handling ensured that pilots like MC Campbell would receive emotional support from home that helped them maintain peak performance under pressure. Family communication played vital roles in combat effectiveness. Aviation ordnanceman First Class Patricia Park specialized in aircraft defensive systems, maintaining the armor plating and protective equipment that had enabled MC Campbell's Hellcat to survive multiple hits from enemy fire. Park's work with aircraft protection systems provided the survivability margins that allowed pilots to continue fighting after sustaining battle damage. Aircraft defensive systems often determine the difference between survival and loss. The Essex Sick Bay Laboratory, staffed by Hospital Corpsman Second Class Christopher Thompson, conducted medical tests that monitored pilot health and fitness during extended combat operations. Thompson's laboratory work provided early warning of medical conditions that could impair pilot performance or pose safety risks during flight operations. The comprehensive medical monitoring systems helped maintain pilot effectiveness throughout long deployments. Ship's cook Third Class Maria Rodriguez prepared specialized meals for aircrew members who required specific nutritional support for high-altitude flight operations. Rodriguez understood that dietary requirements for combat pilots differed significantly from those of other personnel, and she provided nutritional support optimized for aviation operations. The attention to specialized dietary needs contributed to overall pilot performance and endurance. Aviation electronics technician First Class David Kim maintained the sophisticated electronic warfare systems that provided MC Campbell and other pilots with protection from enemy radar-guided weapons and communication intercepts. Kim's expertise in electronic countermeasures represented the cutting edge of wartime technology development. The electronic warfare capabilities gave American pilots significant advantages over their enemies. The Essex Engineering Watch, supervised by water tender First Class Sandra Martinez, maintained the steam systems that powered all shipboard operations, including the catapults and other equipment essential for bay flight operations. Martinez's team ensured that Essex would have unlimited power for sustained combat operations regardless of battle damage or equipment failures. The reliability of ship's power systems enabled continuous flight operations. Aviation structural mechanic Second Class William Rodriguez specialized in aircraft canopy and windscreen maintenance, ensuring that MC Campbell would have clear visibility throughout his combat missions. Rodriguez's work with aircraft transparency systems provided the visual clarity that proved crucial during the split-second target identification required in aerial combat. Cockpit visibility often determined pilot effectiveness and survival. The Essex Library Research Section, managed by librarian mate Second Class Jennifer Park, provided detailed technical information about enemy aircraft performance characteristics and tactical BA vulnerabilities. MC Campbell had studied these materials extensively, building the knowledge base that enabled him to exploit enemy weaknesses during combat engagements. The systematic study of enemy capabilities gave American pilots significant tactical advantages. Aviation machinists mate First Class Carlos Wilson maintained the aircraft engine accessory systems that controlled fuel mixture, propeller pitch, and other critical engine parameters during MC Campbell's combat missions. Wilson's expertise ensured that aircraft engines would deliver optimal performance under all flight conditions encountered during aerial combat. Engine system reliability directly influenced pilot survival and mission success rates. The Essex Damage Control Central Station, staffed by Damage Controlman First Class Patricia Chen, coordinated emergency response procedures that protected MC Campbell and other pilots during enemy attacks. On the carrier itself, Chen's team provided the shipboard safety systems that created secure operating bases for aircraft operations. The ship's defensive capabilities enabled sustained flight operations under combat conditions. Ship serviceman First Class Michael Kim operated the Essex laundry facilities, ensuring that aircrew members would have clean uniforms and personal equipment throughout extended combat deployments. Kim understood that personal hygiene and appearance played important roles in maintaining morale and professional standards during intensive operations. The attention to personal welfare contributed to overall unit effectiveness and individual performance levels. As dawn broke on October 25, 1944, MC Campbell stood once again on Essex's flight deck, preparing for another day of combat operations that would test everything he had learned during his record-breaking performance the previous day. The Japanese had not given up despite their devastating losses, and intelligence reports indicated that fresh enemy formations were being assembled for continued attacks on the American invasion fleet. MC Campbell knew that the war was far from over, but he also understood that the balance of power in the Pacific had shifted decisively in favor of American forces, and the Hellcat had played the crucial role in that transformation that would ultimately lead to victory.